Well, thank you so much, Ruth, for that very insightful report there, which sets the base for our conversation. Now, in studio, I'm not alone. I'm with Nyerere Kutwa, who's the programs manager from the anti-FGM body in Kenya. Very good morning, karibu sana. We also do have Sadia Hussein, an anti-FGM activist and also a survivor. A very good morning, Sadia. Not very new to this studio, but karibu. We also have Leshan Kereto, who's the chair of the United Nations Populations Fund Youth Advisory Panel. A very good morning, karibu sana to the studio. Well, we've seen the statistics from Ruth's story, but also we do have new statistics. And this is from the Kenya Demographic Health Survey, the 2022 survey, which notes that the prevalence of female genital mutilation in Kenya has actually gone down to 15% from 38% back in 1998. I'll begin with you, Nyerere. Is this promising? Are we on the right track?
Yeah, thank you, Zainab, for having me. Of course, Zainab, we're actually on the right track. And when you trace the prevalence of FGM all the way from 1998, where it was actually at 38%, in 2003, it was 32%. In 2008, it was 28%. And 2014, it was actually 21%. And 2022, it's now 15%. So you can see there is actually a steady decline in the prevalence of FGM in Kenya. And therefore, these are indicators that the campaign against FGM has been heightened, and therefore, there is actually light at the end of the day. And when you look at same statistics, that's the KDHS of 2015. It's appalling to note that many of our community members understand or have knowledge about what FGM is. In fact, we realize that a KDHS of 2022 says that, or indicates, that the prevalence of, and the understanding or the knowledge that people have regarding FGM is over 97%. But it's surprising to know that many of our communities still practice FGM. We have some counties where people understand or have knowledge about FGM at 100%, like Kisii County, like Wajir County. The knowledge about FGM is actually 100% in these counties. But look at their statistics, look at their prevalence. The prevalence is actually very, very high.
So it's still high?
So it is still very high. And we are saying that as anti-FGM board, even one girl cut, that's a huge statistic. So at 15%, of course, there's a lot of progress that we've been able to achieve. But we believe we still have a long way to go. And for us to reach at 0%, we still need to put in more efforts. We still need more coordinated efforts in ending FGM in Kenya.
All right.
Because looking at the consequences of FGM, we realize that we need to have 0 FGM in Kenya.
All right.
Yes.
And I do remember in 2019, the former President Uhuru Kenyatta had actually vowed to end FGM by 2022. Yes. So right, we're on that track, but we're not yet there. Yes. Sadia, before you tell us about the kind of work that you're actually doing right now with the communities that you're working with, just take us through, just briefly through your life journey. How has it been?
Actually, thank you, Zainab, for having me here, and NTV at large for the opportunity to speak to the communities. FGM is not a good topic to discuss, especially in the communities. It costed me a lot. I know I received a lot of backlash at the community level and all that. My journey was really, really difficult.
So, Sadia, I know your story is something that we all want to get very, very correctly, but we do have an issue with your microphone, so we're going to fix that in a moment, and then we'll come back to you. All right, so Leshan, you work with the United Nations Population Fund. Just give us an idea of the statistics as well that, from the UNFPA that you have with regard to the progress we've made as a country, aside from some of the statistics we've seen from the KDHS report and also, UNICEF perhaps. But you do work with UNICEF as well together. You collaborate on this fight? Just give us an idea of how it is looking like in Kenya.
Thank you so much, Zainab, and thank you so much as well for having me here. As you know that UNFPA and UNICEF have a joint program on the elimination of FGM, which is the biggest forum that is working towards elimination of FGM, and we must say that we've made great progress when it comes to UNFPA Kenya, especially Kenya being one of the leading countries globally when it comes to fighting female genital mutilation. We have supported a number of activities, grassroots activities, both at national and county level, supporting organizations like the Anti-FGM Board, which is the leading government agency when it comes to ending FGM. And we are glad to say that we have contributed a big deal towards the elimination of FGM, especially from the percentages that we are looking at, from 21% to 15%. We are looking at years that our programs have been affected, hugely by COVID-19. It affected many programs, especially when we were targeting school kids in school. When schools were closed, they had to go back home, and so affected many of our programs. But nevertheless, UNFPA Kenya has been able to penetrate into this families head grassroots community engagement. Just last year, during the 16 days of activism, we had youth-led engagements in Marsabit, Samburu, and Narok counties, deep into the villages, talking to them about female genital mutilation and what are the strategies that can be implemented right from the international levels to the local levels. And we are looking at those girls at risk that we've talked about, especially during COVID. We are now looking into conflicts. We're not looking into climate change. And now we're trying to ensure that those statistics come down. Because as Nyerere has said, that one girl is a big deal. Right. If one has to undergo FGM, then it means that that girl is at risk for the rest of her life. It's not just about a number, and FGM has been something that we've stood out against, especially now with the heavy kind of, I will call it elite, becoming an elite, and that way we are now moving from practicing it at a village level all the way to now medicalization. As we are looking at we've created awareness as UNFPA and UNICEF. We are reaching at 100% knowledge in some counties, but it is not cascading our effort. For example, I'll give a very good example of Kisii County. Kisii County is one county that is well knowledgeable when it comes to FGM, but they have moved into medicalization. The role of UNFPA is bringing now the global context, like countries like Egypt. Remember, FGM started from there. It started from Phoenicians, started from Egyptians in the Middle East, which means they are better at this. And when you look at their percentages, we are looking at close to 98% of medicalization of FGM. What UNFPA is doing is bringing that data into the country context and telling agencies like the Anti-FGM Board that the future, if FGM is going to continue, then it's going to be medicalization. And so we are looking into how do we now engage medical students, doctors, nurses, and to capacity build them to stand against FGM. Because if we do not end FGM, then we are looking into a community is well educated about FGM, while also having high-level medical practitioners, especially with the universal health coverage. So what you're doing as a country office is also now to bring on board innovations that are going to advise grassroots community-based organizations to ensure that we reduce the numbers all the way to zero. We are also bringing the context of the 2030 agenda, where it's a global deadline, but we must input interventions that are going to help at the community level, at the county level, to ensure that they are capacity built towards achieving the 2030 agenda of elimination of FGM.
All right. Let me get back to Sadia. Sorry about that. We apologize, but we fixed that microphone. All right. So, but we do have to take a break. So what we're going to do is take a very quick break here on M Live on NTV. When we come back, we'll be listening to Sadia and, of course, the other gentlemen on where we are as we track our progress on the fight against female genital mutilation here in Kenya. So stay with us. If you want to talk to us, the hashtag, as always, is MLiveNTV at NTV Kenya at Zainab Ismail. Stay with us. We're back in a short while. All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching AM Live on NTV. I'm not alone in studio. I'm with Nyerere Kuto, who's the Programs Manager, Anti-FGM Board, Sadia Hussein, who's an anti-FGM activist, also a survivor, and Leshan Kereto, the Chair of the United Nations Population Fund Youth Advisory Panel. I was getting to use Sadia now. We finally managed to fix that microphone. Now, just take us through, you're giving us your journey and your experience through at least what you've gone through. Tell us how it's been for you.
Thank you once again. My name is Sadia Hussein. I am the founder and CEO of Brighter Society Initiative, BSI. I am FGM survivor and a passionate campaigner. I'm also author of 2 books about FGM, The Hidden Scars of Female Genital Mutilation and A New Dawn for Children. I'm also a mother of 3 daughters who have not gone through FGM. So I started protecting my own daughters from FGM. So my journey wasn't easy at all. Remember, fighting against traditions is not easy. So, and what actually pushed me to speak against FGM was my personal experience. When I was giving birth to my first daughter, I was struggling between life and death. When I was a young kid, I didn't know if FGM was that bad. I was excited to go through it. Because at schools, girls will mock you, you are discriminated, you cannot play with the rest of the girls. But now, since you want to play with the rest, you feel like you should go through it.
It was already ingrained that it is part of life.
Yeah. So girls feel like this is something we should go through. And let me tell you, a lot of women and girls have been conditioned by the society to endure pain. So women and girls who are living with the scars of FGM feel what they went through is normal, and it's normal for women to endure pain in silence. So as a young girl at 10 years old, I really wanted to go through FGM. But what happened later? Contrary to my expectation, you know, girls were telling you, you're not clean, you cannot play with us. But now I understand. There was nothing of the sort. It's just a trap set by culture to make you go through a traditional practice just to control the sexuality of women and girls. At that time, as an innocent young girl, I was taken to the bush by my mother. I expected perhaps I would be washed, cleaned, and all that. But on the contrary, here are several women trying to hold me down. You know, I'm just a 10-year-old girl, very innocent. My expectations and what is happening now is totally different. And my mother ran away. She couldn't even see what was happening to me. And if she wasn't courageous enough to see what was going to or happening to me, that means she was just trying to make me go through FGM because of the societal pressure. And that's what a lot of women and girls are going through. So imagine a 10-year-old girl held down, being pulled by all these women, others holding your hands, because you know the sharp pain of a knife or a razor blade is not as easy as that.
Have been truly terrifying.
You have to, you know, jump, you want to struggle, you know, you want to refuse and say, no, this is what I expected. But how will you even say it? They put a piece of cloth into your mouth. They are that woman who is holding it tightly so that you don't scream. You cannot even say a word. One is pressing your chest down on the ground. The other is pulling your legs apart and all that. So now, why are we going through all these problems? At that moment, I couldn't tell anything. I'm still innocent. The pain started after 2 hours. And when I asked my mother, Mom, you didn't tell me this was awaiting me. And she's like, you know, all of us went through it. And it's okay, it's normal for women to go through this. Because this is the only way we can preserve you from immorality and from all this. Now, I am a grown-up woman. I understand what is bad and what is wrong and what is right. So now my question to those women who at that time believed that when you cut a girl, you are actually protecting her from promiscuity, you are preserving her virginity, you are actually trying to, you know, make the society look good, you want to curb, you know, the sexual urge of these girls. Now I want to ask them, how can you control the sexual urge of a girl by cutting her genitals? Because the urge comes from the mind, not the genitals. The second issue, they want to make you faithful in your marriage. They want you to be virgin until your marriage. Now my question again, this virginity, there is a natural God-given virginity. The FGM is artificial. Which one do you want to keep? It means if this girl has been cut type 3 of FGM and a man slept with her, definitely she will lose her virginity, right? Now, if a girl is not cut completely and there is no man involved, will she ever get pregnant? Will she bring the embarrassment that the community is fearing? Will she lose her virginity? That's a no. So it means we are actually mutilating women and girls just to say we want to curb promiscuity and all that. But in reality, a girl has the capacity of getting pregnant once in a year. But this gentleman has the capacity of impregnating 10 girls a day. You want to cut and chop off the genitals of an innocent child in the name of curbing sexuality and, you know, promiscuity and all that. Who is controlling the virginity or measuring the virginity of this man? Who is controlling the faithfulness, the sexuality of this man? So these are some of the things I battled with. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get answers at that moment.
You talked about type 3 of, are there types of FGM?
Yes, there is type 1 of FGM, which is clitoridectomy. And most of the Somali community say it's Sunnah FGM. Mm-hmm. That's where now the controversial topic is. And you heard the Sheikh telling you, we have the Pokomo community who are Muslims. We have the Bajunis who are Muslims within Tana River County. They do not practice FGM at all. We also have in Mombasa our Muslim brothers and sisters. They do not practice FGM at all. So it's all with us again, the Sunnah, which is called the Sunnah. But for me, I want to call it FGM as it is, because it's never agreed. Why is it that part of the Muslims are practicing and part of them are not practicing? And the religious scholar was actually clear. It's not in the Holy Quran. It's only stated in Hadith, which some claim it's not even authentic. So let's leave that. And Sunnah means something you practice, you get reward. You don't practice, you don't have a sin. So why do we want to actually dwell on the Sunnah part that oppress the women to cut female genitalia? But the Prophet ﷺ used to fast on Monday and on Thursday. If you call for a seminar on that day, they will still eat. And they're not fasting, and it's still Sunnah. So I don't want to argue much on that. Now the type 2 is excision, the one that the Maasais practice. Excision now is cutting part of the clitoris, the labias, but not sewing up like the Somalis do. So type 3 of FGM is now the infibulation, cutting everything, the external genitalia, and sewing it up together, leaving a tiny hole just for urine. So that's called infibulation. And that one now affects, even the other types of FGM affect a lot of things, but this one is a very severe FGM where you're even changing the shape of the genitalia, which is totally wrong.
And we'll come back to just take a look at the psychological impact, the mental impact this has on the survivors. But Mr. Nyerere, you know, you said the practice is still rampant in some parts of the country, some communities. You mentioned Kisii County, for instance. But you said it is not that there is lack of information. So when we go back and look at why there is still prevalence of FGM in some of these communities, then what is it? Is it ignorance?
My colleague Sadia has actually brought it out very clearly from her experience. And she says that the mother took her for FGM, not because she liked
society,
but actually it's because of the society. In fact, to her, she says that it was fashionable. And she was actually excited to go for FGM, only to experience a very nasty occurrence during the practice. So the issue of FGM is all about the social norms. And you know, social is about the way you've been brought up within a community. And the norm, it becomes normal. It becomes obvious that you have to do it. You have to observe the culture. You have to observe beliefs, traditions of that particular community. So it has been very challenging for us to be able to root out because of the social norms. But not only the social norms, but because of also other factors that hinder us from being able to eradicate female genital mutilation in Kenya. The issue of actually implementation of the law. We have got the Prohibition of FGM Act of 2011, which has got penalties and also offenses and penalties. But there's a missing link between apprehending the perpetrators and being able to give justice to the victims of FGM. So the issue of social norms and the issue of full implementation of the law, those are actually some of the greatest challenges that we have in ending FGM. And we realize that for you to be able to make decisions in terms of programming in ending FGM, we actually need data. We've been able to give out statistics in terms of data from the KDHS. But KDHS normally generate data after every 5 years.
Right.
So we believe that it's important for us now to have a different way of doing things. We'll be able to get data within 1 year. That's actually our proposal. Because FGM takes different forms. In fact, we have what we are calling as emerging trends in the practice of FGM.
What are some of these emerging trends? Maybe if you can give some insight into that.
Of course, Sadia has talked about that she was cut at 10 years.
Right.
You see, that was already an emerging trend. Because traditionally, women used to be cut for them to be worried off. And we assume it must have been maybe 15 years and above. But now the practice of FGM is hitting small girls more than mature or ladies. And it's because people now are trying to evade the law. They are trying to gag children so that they can be able to do it, so that by the time the child is mature enough, she already is a statistic. She's actually already a victim of FGM. Another issue about emerging trends is the issue of cross-border FGM. Kenya finds herself in the middle of other 5 or so counties that actually practice FGM. And the borders of Kenya being very porous, you realize that many of our girls are taken across to other countries. Let me give an example of Kuria. In Kenya, we have got the Kuria of Kenya, who actually only 4 clans. But you have got more than 10 clans in Tanzania. These are the same community. These are actually same and one community. With
they
same
practice
beliefs,
the same traditions.
with the same traditions and everything. So the issue of cross-border FGM has been a greatest challenge to us in ending FGM in Kenya. Of course, you have the issue of what my colleague Kareto talked about, the issue of medicalization, where now health professionals are now actually cutting girls. And there are very many factors as to why all this is happening. Because they believe when they take their girls to a medical practitioner, it is safe and it is more of, it is stylish. So the issue of like a county like Kisii, the prevalence of FGM has been propagated highly because of medicalization. Of course, we have other issues that crop up in terms of emerging trends in Kenya. And when you look at the KDHS, you realize that the prevalence of FGM increases with age. For example, in this statistic that have just been released, that is the 2022 statistics, KDHS, it says that the prevalence of FGM for the ages between 15 and 19 is 9%. 9%. But the prevalence of FGM among the cohort from 45 to 49 is 23%. So you can see that...
that's quite telling.
Yeah, it's quite telling, yeah?
Right.
So you can see that the young generation actually coming out very strongly to fight against female genital mutilation. And that is why even this year, we had quite a number of girls running into rescue centers, as opposed in the past where they could easily, it was easy for them to undergo the practice. So when you see more girls running into rescue centers, It is because they understand that FGM has got its effects. They understand that FGM has been outlawed in Kenya. And therefore, they have to run from their homes into safe spaces for the sake of running away from female genital mutilation.
Right.
Yeah, so we realize at the end of it all, ending FGM in Kenya needs more innovative strategies. And let me say more resilient strategies that we can use in ending FGM in Kenya. You talked about the directive from the president, the former president, that is Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, in 2019. Actually, after his directive, we had a lot of efforts that went into ending FGM in Kenya. We are able to cascade that directive to all the 22 hotspot counties in Kenya. And that's the time when we had to form what we are calling as the county anti-FGM steering committees. And they also formed the sub-county anti-FGM steering committees. So the campaign against FGM in Kenya has now been taken to the community. Let it be a dialogue of the community. Let it be a community problem. Yeah? Let us be in a position to sit and dialogue and converse that what are the challenges and how do we deal with this vice within the community. That's why Anti-FGM Board has been able to bring in the issue of having a dialogue with religious leaders, with elders. And that's why you can see we have a number of declarations that were made by various elders from various communities. Like we had the Kisima Declaration, we had a declaration by the elders from Pokot community. We also in a discussion with elders from Nakuria to be able to make a declaration. So our interventions are becoming more targeted, that we go to a community. What are the factors? What are the contributing factors? And how do we deal at that particular level?
Right.
By empowering community-led organizations, youth-led organizations, and actually being able to work around the steering committees to spear ahead or to be able to deal with the matters of FGM.
All right.
At the county level, at the sub-county level.
All right.
Yes.
Leshan, you know, something has come up, which is the issue of the emerging trends, and I'll go back to what Mr. Nyerere had just mentioned. Look, we have issues of cross-border, where you have communities that live along the border, and girls are taken to the other side, where the laws are a bit, less stringent. And so this is, some of the issues and challenges that we're facing as a country, and the organization and stakeholders like yourself are having to deal with in terms of trying to fight FGM. Just tell us, how do we begin to address this issue?
Thank you so much. The emerging trends are very, very clear, and they are contributing quite a big deal when it comes to FGM. And just to add on what Nyerere has said when it comes to cross-border FGM, we also have FGM have been happening from the diaspora. Women in other countries are being brought into the country to practice FGM because they feel like the laws here are less stringent. And so we are looking at this as a very, very big vice, because of course Kenya does not have authority to change the laws of another country. And so what happens is that we need to have conversations. As you look at UNFPA, it has a regional context, which is UNFPA's and Southern Regional Office. Right. And what we are doing as UNFPA regional office is to see how do we work in from the context of UNFPA side to push these countries and to support them towards outlawing FGM, so that it becomes something that is across. We are having dialogues, interministerial dialogues across counties between Uganda and Kenya, between Tanzania and Kenya, bringing civil society organizations together, bringing activists together and having a conversation that if this thing is not helping Kenyan girls, it wouldn't help Tanzanian girls, it wouldn't help Ugandan girls, because at the same time, we are sharing the same values, we are sharing the same religious context. Like take a look at the Maasai at the border of Tanzania and Kenya. They are both Maasais. I mean, the cultural practices are the same. So if it's not helping the Maasai girls in Kenya, it wouldn't help Maasai girls in the other side. What we're saying is we need to have coordinated movements, especially in our grassroots activities, in our grassroots initiatives, to ensure that now we really go ahead and outlaw these practices, because everything starts from the law. If the law says no, then we are able to work, because UN agencies are also mandated to work with a government. And so what we're also trying to see is that we're trying to amplify the voices of those young girls in those particular areas. We're giving special interventions that are going to help them to actually speak out. Because one thing I have realized as an activist is the most important part is that the girl knows her rights. Once they know their rights, they're able to speak out. I've been in so many schools speaking about FGM, and you'll be called and told that these girls don't want to go home, after this, because they are afraid that they're going to undergo FGM. So you're called in to have a conversation with them to see how to help them. So even those girls at borders, we must see how can we also amplify their voices so that their rights are taken care of. Allow me to also allude into a few other emerging trends that are happening. We're looking into climate change. Right now we're having drought that has been the toughest out of the 40 years that we've had. And drought is really affecting the practice of FGM and child marriage. In the Maasai community, for example, we are having something called marriage that is as a result of climate change. When cows die, those cows have to be restocked. And restocking them is looking at your kids. You have 9 to 10 kids and thinking, I will sell this one, I will sell this one, I will sell this one, in exchange for cattle. And this puts you in a very, very bad position, because those young girls are given out for life. But you'll have those cows that we are not even sure are going to survive for the drought.
So this is still something that goes on in our communities? This
is something I'm telling you real time. Right now at Tareto Africa, where I founded that community-based organization, we just launched a project called Trees for Girls, where we're trying to see where we can take care of the environment to at least alleviate the efforts that drought is putting on those girls. Those girls have to be given out for child marriage. And for you to prepare a child to be marriageable, you have to have them undergo FGM. So you're putting this girl at 13, 15 years old under FGM, her body is not biologically ready, then they're taken in for child marriage, and then they are expected to give birth as soon as that, not having healed, and then they are expected to actually, if they do not give birth, then it's another issue. And so if they have not undergone FGM, it's another issue because they're not marriageable. And so we are looking at climate change also now making women products of sale, where they have to be prepared just like another product for them to be sold out. We're also looking at COVID-19, the impact COVID-19 has had. It has had tough inputs towards FGM. It has really changed the whole context. We couldn't go deep into those communities due to curfew. We couldn't go and get them because, in a family context, you can't just approach a family and you want to speak about FGM, something that probably they agree with. The other part is conflict. We are looking now at places like Kerio Valley, where, we are having bandits go ahead. If FGM can take place in a place like Narok, in a place like Migori, in Kisii, how worse is it down there? How worse is it in Pokot, where some of the girls don't even understand Swahili? Then how bad is it going there? And so we are looking at conflicts also contributing a very, very, very large context towards this. We are also lacking the component of humanitarian action. Tomorrow we are moving as UNFPA with colleagues going to Kakuma to also have a conversation with them on the gender-based violence that is happening there. That is the far UNFPA is going towards, ensuring that we leave no one behind in the conversation. And what has made this possible is the impact that UNFPA has put in the approach of young people. I chair the Youth Advisory Panel of UNFPA, and this is one of the best practices that any organization should incorporate, because in this panel we have activists like me, we have survivors, we have people who have real-time information that advise the country office, and that way we come up with programs that actually serve those communities. And then the beauty of it is that these young people are capacity built, given the financing, and then they go ahead and engage across the country. And UNFPA is allowing them to lead. These conversations that we are leading are allowing us to stand out as a country towards the elimination of FGM. So any matter arising, I'm a medical student myself, my impact towards my colleagues, medical students, is very important. That's why this year we are launching a lot of programs that are going to university students. We're going to do male engagement across the country to see how do we also engage men, as this year's theme was about male engagement towards elimination of FGM. So we are also looking into programs that target the communities that have been left out. We are looking into intergenerational dialogues in schools. We are looking into ensuring that there are male champions, of course, in this conversation. And that way, we are looking into, as a country, making interventions that have never been made before. We are looking into supporting county-specific data that are going to, improve evidence-based advocacy, and the technical component, right from those counties that FGM is not outlawed, coming into learning from us so that they can also implement into those countries. So that is the beauty of this, is that we are bringing a multi-stakeholder component that is able to also bring other people into the conversation. Now, right now, we are looking as UNFPA as a girl, not just undergoing FGM, but we are looking at her on a sexual and reproductive health component. A girl that does not understand her menstrual cycle wouldn't know the dangers of FGM. So we are also bringing the body rights interventions, bringing into the bodily autonomy interventions to make sure that these girls actually understand their bodies and they're able to stand against all these issues that they're facing.
All right. Yes. Sadia, yes.
Okay, allow me to add more on what my colleague has actually talked about.
Okay.
Another issue is actually the change of the cut. Sadia has talked about types of cuts or types of FGM. So you realize that people are now changing the type of FGM, maybe from type 1 or type 2 or type 3 now to type 4. Because when you look at the KDHS of 2022, you realize that in 2014 statistics, we have those ladies or girls who are cut where their flesh was removed was actually 87%. That is for 2014 statistics. But for the 2022 statistics, it's actually 70%. So you can see now people are now moving from this type of FGM to another type of FGM. And she has talked about SUNA. So you see, that's a perception that SUNA is not FGM. That could be the perception. Yeah? But actually it is FGM. Because you are saying that FGM is total or partial or causing an injury to the female genitalia, right, without medical reasons.
All right.
So you can see now, instead of actually communities being able to abandon FGM, they are now changing the type of cut from this cut to a different one, with an assumption that what they are changing to is not FGM, but indeed it is FGM.
All right.
So okay.
Let me get to Sadia, then we'll continue with that. Sadia, so you work with communities on the ground, you work with survivors, and you also lead your organization in terms of creating awareness and spreading the information on, FGM. Just tell us some of the biggest challenges you've been able to face as an activist, as an organization working with the communities. And also, as you talk about that, I'd still like us to go back to the issue of the psychological impact that FGM has on especially the young girls.
I think the two men
have really covered quite a lot. Yeah.
So I want to speak on three aspects.
Okay.
One, on the question you asked me, as an organization, let me say as a local grassroots organization, what we do. And I want to speak as a survivor of FGM. And I also want to speak for the communities that are practicing FGM. Let me tell you, Zainab, the truth. If today you call everyone who is working on ending FGM to tell you what they've done, we will bring you a booklet of what we've done. But kwa ground vitu ni different. Everyone will tell you all the beautiful things they are doing. But kwa ground vitu ni different. Why am I telling you this? He mentioned Kerio Valley. I don't know if he has ever went there. I went there myself. I went to Embobot. I went there and saw women and girls who have never been talked to. The last time and the first time they saw End FGM activity was 2018, a celebration, International Day of the Girl Child. That was the first time, and the last time they saw people talking about FGM, and that was the end. I went to Embobot, sat with these survivors, and I managed to rescue 20 girls instantly from FGM who are prepared to be cut. You know, Elgeyo Marakwet is very far. There are no organizations working there actively. If they exist on the record. Organizations actively working there on the real grounds, on the hills, on the valleys, maybe in town, I don't know. Go to Tana River. Tana River is very vast, my dear. We need people to reach out. I will tell you, for all these years I've been campaigning against FGM, I can mention to you a lot of villages I've never reached to. Why? Because I don't have logistics. The people with the money, let me tell you, Zainab, the people who have the resources are busy with conferences, day in, day out, because they want to use these funds. And these survivors, like myself, I have a voice today to say, no, it happened to me, not to my daughter. The number of girls that were shared there who are at risk of being cut are the daughters of these survivors like myself. I saved mine. How about the rest who are at risk right now? He talked about the drought. Drought is actually a crisis right now. But now it has really increased gender-based violence in those counties that are experiencing droughts. Teenage pregnancy is very high, according to even the KDHS, you saw it. Child marriage is very high. FGM is very high in those counties. How are we going to solve it? I have the answers. Now, I want to speak again as a survivor. As a survivor of FGM, let me tell you, it's the wearer of the shoe who knows where it pinches. I feel the pain. I went through FGM, and I want to see every girl free from FGM. But I don't have the resources to reach to every survivor. What happens? We want to shift. Every time we want to engage so many people, we want to engage type. Yes, one approach is never enough. The media has actually the biggest platform of reaching out to millions of people instantly. And that's why I want to thank you, Zainab, for this opportunity. The people who are watching me today, can everyone take that challenge to speak to one survivor? If one survivor can save one daughter, and we are 100 people of us who spoke to 100 survivors, one each, we are already saving 100 girls from FGM. But when we go somewhere, just talk to people randomly because you have a donor to report to. What happens, my dear, to those girls who are at risk of being cut? I have been singing since I started campaigning against FGM. I was just an activist. I was a survivor. I started campaigning against FGM 2008. Okay? So my daughter is now in November turning 15 years. She's now 14. So how are we going to ensure that survivors like me who do not have the voice are being given the confidence to share their stories and save their own daughters?
So do you mean that the people on the ground, you said vitu ni different kwa ground,
Exactly.
right? So you're saying that the people who are really affected and the women and the girls who, you know, are at the most at risk of being mutilated, they have not been given the opportunity, the space to speak on this. Do they not have the support? Do they lack the safe, you know, space to be able to allay their fears on what is happening in the communities? And how do then we address that? Is that the biggest issue right now?
Exactly. In fact, I was coming to that point. I'm thinking of us having a safe space for FGM survivors where they can, like for instance, I started seeing conferences in 2017. That was the first time I engaged with one of the organizations that were dealing with ending FGM. Okay. So 2017, that is, since I started campaigning from ending FGM, I didn't even know FGM, there are other people who are fighting FGM until 2017 when I started meeting other people from other parts of Kenya. So now my question is this: are we driven by passion or not by passion? So now, why am I singing? Since I started, you know, getting to these conferences, I've been singing. I don't have the resources to bring all the survivors together, but I've been singing, can we give a safe space to these survivors?
Okay.
People do not want FGM to end, Zainab. Why am I saying this? If today you bring 200 survivors for a conference, you are already assured these 200 survivors make a commitment, we already assured they will save 200 girls instantly. But we don't want that. People don't want FGM to end. I am sorry to say this, but that's the true picture. Today, I don't have funding. With the minimal resources I have, sometimes I just struggle from my pocket. And I am able to show you in Tanariva, this is a girl I saved from FGM. This is a survivor who is now on this platform because of my efforts.
Right.
How about the billions that have been spent in the name of ending FGM?
But we have seen, when we're looking at the track, we have seen, you know, that the efforts have sort of borne some fruit to some extent, right? When we're seeing that the numbers are going down, although at a slower pace, don't you feel like that's something that, you know, is good? That there's actually some effectiveness into the kind of work that, you know, organizations who are really putting resources into it is working?
Okay, for me, I will tell you yes and no. Reason being, I am not the only one. There are a lot of other FGM survivors and activists who are fighting at the grassroots, and they are never recognized. Saadia has been recognized. She is fighting. She is looking for the spaces. What about the others whose efforts are never recognized? Yeah, so we really need FGM Survivors Conference, where the first 2 days, it's about healing for them. Remember, FGM has a psychological effect. And
we're going to come back to that. You didn't answer my question, but we'll come back to that. We have to take yet another break here on AM Live on NTV. Talk to us. The hashtag is MLiveNTV at NTV Kenya, at Zainab Ismail. We'll be back and continue with the conversation in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. You're watching NTV. This is AM Live as we almost wind up our conversation on just tracking the progress we've made so far in the anti-FGM fight here in the country. Nyerere, when we're talking about the prevalence of FGM in Kenya has gone down to 15% from 38% back in 1988, right? Is it? Yes, 1998. So we're looking at it as a national figure, holistic. But Sadia had raised some points that, look, we have some communities in some different parts of the counties that we don't have county-specific data on those, you know, areas. Just take us through then, how do we begin to, you know, get this data so that we can be able to have targeted approach to be able to address this issue within those communities?
Thank you, Sadia. The 15% is a national prevalence. That's as per the KDHS 2022.
Right.
And we are calling these as preliminary indicators, giving us the national prevalence of FGM in Kenya. Hopefully this March, we'll be having a detailed analysis of the KDHS, which will be able now to give us the prevalence of FGM per county in Kenya. It is true that there is always a very huge discrepancy or a difference between the national statistics and the county-specific data. For example, going by the 2014 statistics, the prevalence of FGM nationally was actually at 21%. But looking at, because by that time, the prevalence was out in terms of communities. For example, the prevalence of FGM among the Somali community, as per the 2014 KDHS, was 94%. While the national prevalence was 21%.
Right.
Yeah? Among the Samburu community, it was actually 86% for 2014, against the national prevalence of 21%. Yeah? Coming to the Kisii community, it was actually 84%. And then we had the Maasai community, 78%. And then we had the communities from Embu, Meru, Tharaka-Nithi at around 31%.
So that gives you a clearer picture of how it looks, at least according to each different county and community.
Yes.
Right.
So what we did this time around, because, you know, in 2014, we are not so much involved because that's the time when the anti-FGM board had been established.
Right.
So this time around for the 2022 statistics, we were fully involved. And we advocated that we must be able to get county-specific data. So as we look forward into releasing the detailed analysis of the KDHS, we'll now be able to see at the prevalence of FGM per county. And as anti-FGM board, we'll even endeavor, the moment those results are actually released, we'll be able now to go to those counties and find out, even within those counties, we still have discrepancies. Sadia say that, like in Tana River, you find that the Muslim community, there's a section which is actually practicing FGM, but others are not practicing, they have stopped. So even within counties, you'll find that, for example, let me take an example of Narok County. You might find that Narok County has got 6 sub-counties. So you may find that in Narok South, the prevalence of FGM might be higher than the prevalence of FGM, let me say, in Narok North sub-county. So you still have those discrepancies all the way from the national prevalence up to the county prevalence. So looking forward into having the exact statistics of FGM per county. And this is very important for us as anti-FGM board and all players in the campaign against FGM. For the sake of programming. That, do we program for the whole county? Yes. Is the prevalence same? Yes. If not, then we have again to plan in terms of the sub-county levels.
Right.
Yes. So there's an item which I just want to highlight a little bit about the secrecy on the practice of FGM. You know, FGM has gone underground. We normally say that the absence of war does not mean peace. So the practice of FGM has gone underground. That's why it's even happening here in Nairobi. It's happening actually in urban centers. It's happening in the village, under the cover. And that one has been one of the greatest challenge in ending FGM in Kenya.
To try and uncover the processes.
Yes, and it's why, it's because people want to understand that FGM is illegal, it has been outlawed, and the moment you are caught, you will face the law. So they have now gone underground. So those are areas which we really need to find out on how we can deal with the secrecy in the practice of FGM. It has
become more sophisticated in terms of hiding the practices of FGM among the communities. That's another big issue that you have to deal with.
A very big issue.
Right.
So Sadia talked about the issue of course, we cannot have enough funding. But I want to thank the Kenya Kwanza government. Really thank the Kenya Kwanza government because in their plan, they have been able to make a commitment under the women agenda to increase the funding to the anti-FGM board and also farm up the implementation of the law. And that's why even His Excellency the President has pronounced himself out very clearly that we should not have FGM taking place in this 21st century.
All right.
So we are happy because of his pronouncement. And we are saying that because the issue of political goodwill has been a very big challenge in ending FGM in Kenya. And that's why Sadia says that the Islamic scholars, some are agreeing, some are not agreeing. So you can see now the discrepancy between the political class and the elites, the professionals in our community. And are they coming out clearly to condemn FGM?
All right.
Yes.
I'm going to give you just less than a minute to make your final remarks, and then we can have Leshan and Sadia as well as we wind up this conversation. But I'll give you an opportunity just very quickly. What do we need to put in mind from the anti-FGM board? I know there's a lot on your plate right now, but key takeaway, at least from you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, let me thank you for giving us an opportunity to be able to share with the Kenyans on the status of FGM in Kenya. The anti-FGM board is a state agency. And our main mandate is actually to end FGM in Kenya. The vision of the board is to end FGM in Kenya. And therefore, we are calling upon all the stakeholders that anti-FGM board alone cannot end FGM. This is a national issue that needs to be addressed by all of us. And therefore, moving forward, the anti-FGM board pledges to coordinate effectively all anti-FGM activities. And we are happy that we have got very many partners who have been able to come in to be able to be part and parcel of this discussion on ending FGM in Kenya. So as anti-FGM body, we are reporting clearly that as much as the prevalence has gone down, 15% is still very high. We still need to look at it afresh and say, how do we reach at zero? All of us as players in ending FGM in Kenya, let us endeavor to ensure that the prevalence of FGM in Kenya goes to zero prevalence. Thank you.
All right. Leshan, I'll give you an opportunity as we wind up the conversation. There's still much more. There's a lot of hope when we're looking at, organizations like yourself trying to help communities on the ground. Your final remarks and what do we need to keep in mind?
Thank you so much, and also thank you for the media giving us an opportunity to highlight this. I mean, how many people are looking into this conversation today, and mine will be to just state that there is nothing as important as if communities decide to take care of the girls. Yes, there are organizations, there is government, and there are other people who are fighting FGM, but there's nothing as beautiful as communities actually standing out to take care of their own. These girls belong to you. The repercussions of FGM will happen to you. Probably myself, I'll go back to Narok, to Mamaise community, and after a very powerful engagement. But if you continue with the practice, no one is coming to save you. Yes, organizations like UNFPA Kenya are leading agencies in the world when it comes to ending FGM. But the most important thing is that you take care of your young ones, because the beauty of a nation is judged by how it takes care of its young ones. The moment you are terrorizing those young girls, it ends up really coming back to you. One of the biggest innovations that the world can ever achieve to end FGM is community-led initiatives. Let us have the Maasais lead their own conversations. Let us have the Somali lead their own conversations. Let us have the Pokot lead their own conversations to end FGM, and every other community. Every community has a reason as to why they practice FGM. The dynamics are very different. The types are very different. The contexts are very different. We are having communities starving. We are others are having banditry. We are others are having different issues that contribute towards FGM. And so the best solutions are best crafted by those communities. UNFPA Kenya will continue to support, but we are playing a facilitation role. We want to ask communities to come up and support their own. Yesterday we had the International Women's Day, where we're talking about digital, where we're talking about innovation in technology for gender equality. Let us approach innovative solutions that organizations like youth advisory panels are bringing on board towards ensuring that we have gender equality, through innovations and technology. Organizations like us will facilitate that, and we will bring champions. For example, Lillian Siante, who was yesterday highlighted by the Daily Nation, leading conversation in electrical engineering towards ending FGM. We want those communities to bring their allies, let them actually speak back to those communities. FGM will end when those communities decide, not when NGOs end up really, like angels from heaven, ending FGM. The sustainability component is with those communities. Those girls will live to be yours. Take care of them. We will facilitate, we will support. But at the end of the day, the responsibility of your young ones is with you. I encourage all of us to work together. I support the government, and we thank the president for coming out very clearly. The previous president actually awarded myself and Sadia for outstanding efforts to end FGM. There are celebrate champions, and I'm very optimistic towards the end of FGM, and UNFPA Kenya is also optimistic, and we must all work towards ending female genital mutilation.
All right, thanks, Leshan. Sadia, you get the last word on this as a survivor. As a, you hold many titles, you have many hats. All right, so as we move forward, what do we need to keep in mind? And at least from the stakeholders, you're one of the stakeholders. What is the way forward for us?
Okay, first and foremost, I would like to thank NTV for always speaking about FGM. This is not the first time. I have seen many instances you bring up this topic of speaking about FGM. And media actually plays a very big role in reaching out to the communities. And I would like to urge you to continue media engagements and engaging the general public. Secondly, I would like to actually I support the work of the government led by the president himself. President Ruto committed to say, even reached out to the women reps and said, can you kindly speak to in parliament and say that FGM is bad? And I really welcome that. And I want to actually personally say the CEO, I wish she was here today, but the CEO anti-FGM board, being a survivor herself, she's actually ready to work with people
And I believe the board will be funded and they will be able to reach the hard-to-reach areas or support the grassroots. The other issue is NGOs like UNFPA need to really work with the grassroots direct, not them directly implementing. I would like to urge them, kindly support all the grassroots organizations in those affected communities. He brought one important key issue, which is a community-led solution.
Right.
For me, I would really go for direct community interventions. As he said, there is no one approach that will actually end FGM. We really need to explore all the approaches. But the first approach should be engaging the community directly so that they come with their own solutions. Let them own and say FGM is bad. Let the solution come from them. What we have been experiencing is people sitting in big conferences in Nairobi or even in worldwide, anywhere else, making, you know, decisions on behalf of those survivors at the grassroots level. When the interventions are taken to the community, there is backlash, there is rejection, you know. So we really need to have direct solutions from the community themselves.
All right.
The last issue is about mentorship for these children, not just girls, but for both boys and girls. The boys are the future husbands to these girls.
Right.
If they are ready to say, like the young men you saw there, I really want to congratulate them. They are from Tana River.
Okay.
They are called Iqra FC. They have been championing for the rights of women and girls, saying we need to protect the dignity of our sisters.
It's not a women's issue, but
yes, and we need
holistic
to accept our
issue.
sisters
Right.
as created by God. So my last words are, can we empower the survivors and acknowledge that what happened to them shouldn't happen to their daughters.
Right.
And as the CEO and the founder of Brighter Society, I am actually looking at the bigger picture of engaging everyone, an integrated approach. FGM is not a standalone, as you heard from the conversations, and we really need to integrate it. When we want to talk about conflict, let's also talk about FGM.
All right.
When we want to talk about agriculture, livestock, drought, crisis, climate change, let's also speak about FGM, because the lives of women and girls are at risk,
Right.
and they need to be in the development agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sadia Hussein, anti-FGM advocate, also the founder of As Brighter Society Initiative. Thank you so much for coming. Nyerere Kuto, who's the Programs Manager, Anti-FGM Board, as well as Leshan Kereto, who's the Chair of the United Nations Population Fund Youth Advisory Panel. And you know, it's good because we have two gentlemen and a lady having this conversation. It's not just a women's issue. Thank you so much, Sadia and Nyerere and Leshan, for coming in this morning to have this conversation. It's something that we hope to continue, and of course we'll continue to keep track on the progress that we've made as a country and some of the challenges and issues that we need to keep addressing in order to completely eradicate FGM in our society. Well, thank you once again for watching. This is where we wrap it up on M Live. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. You want to stay tuned. My name is Zainab Ismail. Have yourself a good morning and good day.